Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another Tuesday frequency. And the topic that I want to discuss today is no-code solutions. And the background here is that with with Helix and Franklin, and now with aem-live, we of course have taken the path of just integrating with stuff that is already there, right? And one of the things that makes this interesting is to use using things like Google Docs or Microsoft Word for authoring, especially using Excel, and then seeing what kind of integrations are possible on top of that, right? So instead of asking our developers to code everything themselves, the nice thing about a lot of these big platforms is that there's already pre-built integration available, and you can use no-code tools to further integrate and automate. And I've always found that really interesting and a very powerful way to implement some of the use cases and some of the scenarios that you are experiencing. And I wanted to really use this as an exchange of ideas, of best practices, of things that you've done with no code tools that you are using. And I prepared two tools that I'm using on a regular basis, and I actually have a third tool in the back pocket, in case there's nothing else to show. And as a special guest today, I have invited Martin, who is an official no coder. I think that the job title is product manager. So and I hope that Martin can also share a couple of the experiences that he's made with no code tools, and a couple of tricks. And as always, and especially today, if you have things to share, if you have things to comment, just go ahead, unmute yourself, start asking questions, and if you have something to show, even start sharing your screen, and we can go with this. Okay. So Martin, what's your favorite no-code tool that you're using on a regular basis?
I'm slow. I need to think about it. I would have said Excel and Word,
Right.
obviously in the context of actually
Yeah. So
yeah.
So one of the things, and mentioning Excel is a really good point, right? Because Excel is probably the most vibrant no-code platform in the world, and it predates that term by about 20 years, right? But when you think of how you can trick business users into coding, the best way to do this is to just put it into a big grid, where the columns are labeled A, B, C, and the rows are labeled 1, 2, 3, and that's a really powerful way of doing it. And one of the things that I like in particular about Google Sheets is that they've actually implemented a couple of formulas that make it really, really easy to integrate with external sources, right? So, for instance, you can fetch an HTML page in Google Sheets, and turn that and extract a table out of that HTML page, and put it into your formula. And you can do the same thing with XML feeds. You can do that with JSON files, and that offers a lot of customization options.
I used in the past, I was Microsoft.
So I did everything in Access,
Uh,
but it's incredible to see really how far you can get with Excel or
Yeah.
Google Sheets. Also with
Yeah.
having one tab with the raw data and then dynamically creating subsets on subsequent tabs here. I mean that's definitely powerful.
Yeah, and to a certain degree, I think the spiritual successor to Microsoft Access is Airtable, which I'm also I'm not using it myself, but I'm seeing a couple of teams within Adobe using it for things like project management and so on. So it's an interesting tool. So actually, what I would like to share first is, let me see if I can do this. Is that might come a bit surprising because it's not. Let me find the share my screen button before I. Wait. Before I start talking. Okay. So. Okay. So the first tool that I like to talk about is actually not related or not directly related to AEM, but I'm using it almost on a daily basis, and this is Apple Shortcuts, and Apple Shortcuts originally started, and Apple has a long history of enabling no code style automations, right? They started with AppleScript, which is a really weird programming language meant to appeal to non-programmers by looking like weird English, and to a certain degree, all programming languages look like weird English, right? It's just the degree of weirdness that you can accept. And then they came up with Automator, and then they acquired a company that built a product called Workflow, which is what later then became Shortcuts. And interesting. Okay, so no, damn it, this is bad. Discord was just telling me that. Oh my god, give me 1 second. I need to figure out how to do this because I can't share my screen and record at the same time. Let's do. Okay. So let's try that again. So much for the theory of that I can show you what I'm seeing. And this is complicated. I have too many screens and 2 of the screens are showing the same thing. So if you can see yourself, then you're seeing trippy and not entirely what I expected, but that's it. Are you able to see the Shortcuts app?
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. That's what I wanted to show you, and that's what I wanted to show. That's what I wanted to have on the recording. So, by the way, for everyone watching the recording, that's why it's always better to be here live instead of watching the recording. So, I've created over the time a bunch of shortcuts, including shortcuts that are using that are using including shortcuts that are using the OpenAI APIs for essentially getting me a better Siri, and there are a couple of things that you can just automate, right? So one of my favorite issues that got just solved last fall with the new iPhone was that when I'm traveling, I'm always I'm not very good at orientation. This is why I almost always have maps up and running, and then when you have maps running on your iPhone, and your iPhone is locked, then the thing that you see is the map. And if you want to take a photo while you're navigating on the map, this is actually really hard because the normal photo shortcut is not there on the home screen. So what I built is a side button action, which is basically looking at the current focus, and if I'm currently traveling, then it's opening the camera, and if I'm in fitness mode, which means I'm cycling, it's also opening the camera, and then if I'm not traveling, I have the ability to switch between personal and work mode. So and as you can see, this would be a bit shorter if it was just code, but it shows you really nicely how most of these no-code tools work to a certain degree, right? They contain various actions, they contain if statements, and you can string them together. And I'm also using this for things like when I'm at a conference, I have the ability to automatically post messages that use the hashtag of the last conference that I've been sharing information from. So a really nice way to put things together, and actually quite capable, because you have the ability to do things like, not sure if I'm going to show you any secrets, but this, for instance, is an action that is actually making SSH connections to a different server and running remote shell commands, right? So you can do a lot here, and the reason I don't want to show you the workflow in detail is that of course I have secrets in there, API keys. So that's the thing that I don't want to. That's the thing that I don't want to show. So so that's my first daily driver no-code tool, and one of the things I'm always thinking one day I'm going to do is build something that is able to take a document, maybe a node from my iPhone, and turn it into an HTML, and then send it over to our HTML to MD service, so that I essentially have a poor man's crosswalk that is working on Apple nodes instead of AEM as a backend. So are you using similar personal automations in your life?
I used the shortcuts in the past too. And when I was driving to the office and taking one of my colleagues with me to calculate when I will be at his home,
Mm-hmm.
and sending him automatically a message when he should be downstairs, kind of.
Right. Cool.
But
Yeah.
now it could be even done out of the box more than it was before.
Yeah.
So when I was leaving home, I was just starting the shortcut, and then he got the message, and the navigation system was turned on and things like that.
Right. Yeah. No, and from a product perspective, that's always an interesting thing, right? You look at what are your users doing to plug the gaps in your product, and then you just turn this into built-in features. So this travel time notification is something that is falling into that category. And I have a setting that when I leave, I think a 500-meter radius around my home, I automatically turn the travel mode on. And I wish I can also extend it to sense the presence of nearby Bluetooth devices, so that when I'm on a bicycle, that it would detect, yep, that's not travel, that's a workout. But I'm not that far yet. Okay, so I have a second tool that I want to show, but again, for this I will need to move windows around a bit, which you can't see, but everyone who's seeing the recording can see me. Rearrange windows. Okay, so my number 2 automation tool is, sorry again, screen sharing is more complicated than you'd expect. Okay, so my second most frequently used no-code automation tool is Zapier, and that's actually what I use mostly for work. And Zapier has been around for a really long time. Years ago, I've been using IFT, which is if this then that, and if this then that was basically positioning itself mainly for the home user market, and Zapier for the professional market. So Zapier has a lot of really powerful integrations as part of their platform, and I can show you a couple of automations that we are using. So the first one is this one, which is we have the way it works is we have an on-call rotation for aem-live, and there are about 10 people in that rotation. And from time to time, somebody wants to go on vacation. That happens, and sometimes when people go on vacation, they actually don't want to be bothered by PagerDuty going off. So we created a process where in PagerDuty you would basically create an override and say this shift is taken by a user called PTO, and I'm subscribing in Google Calendar to that user's scheduled shifts. And normally the calendar of scheduled shifts for this user should be empty, except when somebody scheduled an override. And this is when the first Zapier event fires, which is new or updated event in Google Calendar. And then I'm filtering this to see if this contains the name PTO. And if it does, then I'm sending a Slack message to, or I'm sending a message to our Franklin on-call channel. Please take over my shift on begin of the event time zone, and a link to our PagerDuty schedule. So that's the automation there. And really easy, really just 3 steps. And we've been using this for quite some time. And you might say, well, you only updated it January 19th. And the reason was that before we've been using it in Zapier, we've been using Microsoft Power Automate for this flow. And interestingly, you would think, well, Microsoft Power Automate probably has really superior integrations with Microsoft tools, and that's a reasonable assumption to make, but it's the wrong assumption to make. We actually found that Zapier is way more powerful, and you can do way more interesting stuff. And this is, of course, a very simple flow. Let me show you a more complicated flow, which is let's take this one. No, that's the wrong one. Wait. Here. It's right here. So, and it's actually happening in two flows. So we have a first step, which is in Zapier you can create webhooks, which basically is HTTP URLs that can be called from other servers. And speaking of no code, you can always put code into, or in a lot of no code solutions, you can put in a bit of code, which is the case here. Then we are fetching the page. We look if this page already exists. It's basically by using a spreadsheet row, and then we continue if this is a new path, and then we determine if this is a Helix powered site or not Helix powered site. In both cases, send a channel message in Slack saying, hey, we found a new site that is running on aem-live, or we found a new site that is running on aem as a cloud service. It's updating the spreadsheet automatically. So so that's an example for a more complicated flow. But as you can see, nothing as complicated as the flows that I'm using for my personal automation. And Martin, I think we also built a couple of Zapier automations together. Can you share what we did there?
Yeah, I mean, all of you probably have a Slack channel with us, and so we had this form for customers and other partners to request a Slack channel, and obviously we used the auxiliary service to build that the page with the form to request the channel, and then the automation we built got triggered by Google Sheets. So if a new row got added, then Zapier kicked off the workflow to extract the name, the company name, trimmed down the name, created a Slack name, and then created the channel, and also even informed people here. So I think that was, I think we even got so far, well, Lars got so far that we had a list of people from our end that we automatically assigned in a round robin way, so that the Slack channel was not very empty. I think it was pretty easy to learn, and the way if you never used Zapier, I think it's great that you can test every step of this whole workflow and nicely identify if there's any potential issues. Maybe what I've learned is if customers ask twice for the same channel, then I mean, we could have done a better job on sending us a better error message. We just got a message from Zapier saying that the workflow couldn't get executed, and then you had to go in and find kind of that was a duplicate name, and Slack returned an issue.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think it was great and very powerful.
Okay. I'm going to mute Helge. He's making noise that is, I think, unrelated to no code or code. So,
Related to food.
yep. And yeah. So the thing that I really like about these no-code tools, right, is that they put a lot of power into the hands of users, and that they allow you to scratch your own itch, right? Instead of saying, oh yeah, we need a developer to build this, and we need somebody to write a spec, and then we need to put it in a backlog and push it to the next sprint 3 times in a row because it never got priority. This is something that empowers the users to do their own automation, right? And once it becomes useful enough, and proves its value through usage, then you can turn it. Then you can still turn it into a product feature, right? And then you can overcome some of the shortcomings that you experience with these platforms. So, do we want to talk about shortcomings? All of and I have a couple of things that I noticed working with these platforms where I'm annoyed from time to time, right? So probably the biggest one is that, and not everything there is within the power of the platform to fix, right? But probably the biggest and most recurring issue that we've had, especially with Power Automate, was that authentication would expire after a while, right? So you would connect two tools to Power Automate and go through the little OAuth dance in order to grant Power Automate access to your Outlook calendar or access to a SharePoint folder, and then after 90 days, when I had to rotate my password for Adobe, the authentication suddenly was broken, which actually should be unrelated to the authentication change. Is probably a policy change somewhere, but having automations that break because of authentication is really annoying, especially if they don't tell you that they're broken, right? Because then sometimes you end up relying on an automation who is happily doing its job day in and day out, and then after a while it's stopping to do the job and you don't even notice until it's too late. So that was one annoyance that I had to cope with. Ina and Martin and others, I don't know who else is there because you all have turned off your cameras. So what are problems and challenges that you've experienced with no code automation?
Well, sometimes no code. So if you come from a coding tool and then move to a no code one, sometimes it's the limitations. So you can only do what the designer of the no code tool expect you to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have crazy ideas. You just cannot do them.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes you think, well, that just give me a for loop, right? Or just give me a map and a reduce function, and then you think, oh, okay, but how would I explain a map and reduce combination to a non-coder, and how would I get this into a design spec? So I definitely I've definitely felt that. So yeah.
Sometimes even easier stuff, which could be easily done in the UI, is just not done because of limited resources or limited visibility that this could be interesting. Because if you work too long in the coding, then you have different ways of doing things, and then maybe you also figure out, it can be done quite easy with XYZ feature.
Right.
But if you think always in a different way, and you always did it in a different way, you want to do it again in this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No. That and that's definitely true. Right. It's a to a certain degree, you could almost say that no code environments are visual programming languages, and just like with any other programming language, it's not just learning the syntax, but it's also learning and understanding the paradigms of the programming language in order to find the right solution, right? So Christian, I'm seeing you. Anything you want to add?
You mean me? So
Yes.
I'm new here. Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm Christian, and I'm very frequently use N8N as automation tool, which is maybe a competitor of Zapier,
Okay.
but with the difference that you can use it as cloud version as well as on-prem. So
Right.
you can host it on your own machine, and if you want, I can share some screens from my private instance, not
Yeah.
from my
Yeah, that would be cool.
business used instance. So let's see if that works on my Linux machine here to share the screen.
Are you self-hosting it?
Yeah, I'm self-hosting it on a small Proxmox server in my home lab. I hope you can see now the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, it's working.
And that's an example workflow
Yeah.
I created to read the Adobe Commerce package server.
Right.
So the idea behind is that it's once a day it runs in the schedule trigger job. So you see it's only it's node based, so you can place drag and drop here some nodes. I can show that in a new workflow as well, and it's calling then the Adobe server, fetches all the package information, and at the end it saves the metadata here in a small database. And then I have a second job, and this second job notifies me about new versions. So it's connected then to a MetaMost server, and it sends emails.
Yeah.
So you see all my automations here.
Right.
And also tag this stuff. And it comes with maybe 200 integrations. So N8N is very powerful. And it can also connect to all the stuff you mentioned in Zapier, for example. Let's do a small automation. Can also debug this here. And then you have this stuff here. No?
Yeah.
So if you need Excel, for example, that's also possible. So you can connect any cloud environment you want. Or what's also available is AI stuff. You know? So there's
Cool.
LangChain integrated here.
Cool. Okay.
Where you can connect, for example, also your private AI stuff.
Right.
It's my own local server. You can see also Llama models. And then you have here interactive way to test everything. Yeah, this should work. And one big advantage of N8N is it's logging also. It logs all the executions. So if something goes wrong, but it's disabled for this workflow. But if something goes wrong, or maybe this one, you can click here in any step and see all the data. Yeah.
Yeah.
also as JSON,
Yeah. Very cool.
where you can replay everything.
Since when have you been running this?
Maybe 2 years.
Okay. Is that did that project used to be called Node-RED? Is that the same?
No, it's a different one. I have also a Node-RED server.
Okay.
But my opinion is Node-RED is more related to next to your hardware.
Okay.
So if you have home automations with hardware, then it's
Right.
easier to connect with Node-RED. But
Yeah.
NetN is one level up. So in your
Got it.
infrastructure, so it's more connecting services instead of hardware. But
Yeah.
you can do the same stuff as well in Node-RED. But I differentiate here.
Yeah.
For in Node-RED, I have connected my lamps, so so Philips Hue
Right.
lamps
Yeah.
and
Yeah. As you might have noticed, I'm very deeply entrenched in the Apple ecosystem. So for me, all of that is going through HomeKit.
I don't know if HomeKit is here. Let's see.
But I think there's something called HomeBridge or Home Assistant, which I think allows you
I
to
use Home Assistant, so you can connect your Home Assistant here, and and connect Apple stuff to Home Assistant, so you can. That's what I mean. It's one level higher. So NetN.
Yeah. No, and as always, when it comes to automation, you can easily spend 10 days automating something that will take you 10 minutes to do manually.
Yeah, and
but
to go back to the discussions before, so there's also a way to mix coding stuff with low code nodes here.
Right.
So, for example, if you need more special stuff, and that's really difficult in some tools to, if it's more complex, then you can have a code node here. And in the code node, you can place here JavaScript and
On Python.
in some versions you have also Python here.
Yeah, cool.
It's an embedded Python interpreter.
Yeah.
So it's then easier to do some special stuff. And I tried to generate code with ChatGPT for NetN and it works fine.
Yeah. I'm just thinking there's another tool. I'm just blanking on the name that we're using for some of our service to service automation, which we picked in particular because it's running on a separate infrastructure from the rest, and we use this to notify our logging of incidents, which is really more about adding some metadata into our logging platform. But again, another no-code example. It's called PipeDream. That's the name of the tool. Let me see if I can bring that up. Yeah, I think I can. Screen 1. Okay. And I think I'm using it with Google. Nope. Well, forget about this.
This tool is more related to APIs, right?
Yeah, it's largely an API automation tool, but and the basic idea is most of these tools give you an HTTP endpoint, and you can also run Node.js code or JavaScript code, which I'm doing. So it's a nice it's another nice little automation service. So yeah, so thinking about this, we actually have a bunch of these services that are right that to a certain degree are working like duct tape, right? When you if you have a house and that is not exactly new, then you might ask yourself where are all the places where I'm using duct tape, and the longer you think about this, the more places that contain duct tape come up. I think Martin is just smiling because he's thinking, at least my roof doesn't have any duct tape anymore. So
Yeah, I mean, as a context, 100-year-old house, there's no duct tape. It's completely remodel.
yeah,
But that's where I use most actually of my no code is with Home Assistant as well.
right.
So I made my home super smart.
Yeah.
Maybe one question, probably wrong audience, but I do a lot obviously in Outlook, and I've detected now that we have these Viva Insights. Has any one of you looked at Viva Insights? It's kind of AI insights into your whole email box, and if yes,
No.
are there any potential automation that you guys have done? It's maybe wrong audience here, but kind of cool what you can see. Also helps you if you have out of the box, or if you plan your vacation, then it will cancel all your meetings in that time, will tell you how much people looked at your emails, things like that. So I
Okay, cool.
guess those insights could be useful at one point also
Yeah.
for some automation.
Yeah, didn't know about this. Need to look at it.
Yeah, I think with Adobe they just introduced that 1 or 2 weeks ago. You can actually see how many seconds they spend on your emails, reading your emails. So that's pretty nice.
Okay, well, now you know how many seconds I spent reading emails.
Yeah, I was like, oh man.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Really glad to hear all of you and to see some of you today. What do you think about the later 10 a.m. time slot for 10 a.m. Central Europe time slot? Is that something that we should keep going, or should we move back to 9 a.m.?
I think as long as we are not switching from week to week, then because this is really confusing. So
Okay.
I really thought we are at 9, and then I realized, oh, it's 10 today.
Yep. Yeah, me too. As you.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
yeah.
I thought
Okay,
earlier.
let's keep 9, and then we see.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
The early risers have spoken. Okay, excellent. Good.
The next one is planned already, huh? The next one is planned. The next
Right.
few ones.
But for 9 or for 10?
For 9 o'clock. Next,
Yeah.
but we changed it to Wednesday next week, so to confuse you completely, but we kept 9. This is just a special one with RAM data. I mean, that's important. And then we start with the normal sequence for Thursday 5 o'clock and Tuesday 9 o'clock with 2 Helix sessions. Or before a Dark Alley session, and at the end of the year in October we go to Adobe. But this is something that will be announced later. But it's already there, just to push it out.
Okay, excellent. Well, as I said, great to see some of you, great to hear all of you. Looking forward to seeing you next Wednesday, you said?
Yes.
Next Wednesday.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Talk to you then. Thanks.